I noticed something. I haven't really heard anybody say it before, but I noticed it, so I've asked thousands of people to do this, and so far it's worked just about every single time. I noticed that when you stare up, you can't feel bad. Stare up and try to get yourself upset about something, or stressed about something, or overwhelmed about something while you look up. Try it. What happens? You go, I can't think of anything to say. Can't really think of anything right now. Now, every once in a while, somebody will say, yeah, I can still feel it, but they practice all the time. Okay? But most of the time, just from... Now, of course, you'll understand why that works, and quickly it works because to tell yourself the story and to feel the feelings that cause you to feel upset, you have to go down. You have to look down. You become auditory digital, and you're telling yourself the things that are upsetting you, and then you check over here and notice how bad it makes you feel, which exacerbates the victim story, and then you see people that are depressed that are just like this. Back, forth, back, forth, back and forth. So I was working with a guy one time, his hired nurse wheeled him in because he was hospitalized for depression. And he had this nurse that he hired, he had some money, and so she was with him all the time, and she says, this poor man, he's just depressed all the time. She says, we take care of him as best we can, but he is just so depressed all the time. So she wheeled him into my office, and here's this older guy, and he's got a blanket on his lap, and he's just all depressed. And he wheels him into my office, and one of the first things you have to do sometimes is you have to get leverage. So in my mind, I have to do something to grab this guy's attention. Okay? So I sit down, I get right in his face, and I'm like, hey! How you doing? So I see the con, and I get why you're doing that, so these pretty girls will hang all over you, so that's cool. And so here's the deal, this is what we're going to do. I guarantee that I can get you to not feel depressed. You won't even be able to feel depressed in 10 seconds. And of course, this guy's looking at me more confused than anything else. Now over time he'll think, I hate this guy, he's a prick, he's there, whatever, but right in the moment he's just confused. Okay? I've broken his state. In that moment, is he depressed? No, he's confused. But what I told him is, I said, come on, I dare you. I said, stare at the ceiling and try to get depressed. Stare at the ceiling and try to get depressed. And so, he's a little defiant. Nurse walks out of the room. Okay, she's talking to my assistant over there. And so, he looks at me. No one's in the room but me and him. So he just kind of looks up. And he's staring at the ceiling. And this all happens in about 10 seconds. Staring at the ceiling, and he starts to do this. Now, it's the first smile he's probably had. I mean, parts of his face were cracking off. It's the first smile he's probably had in a decade, right? And he starts to smile. And then all of a sudden, on the corner of both our eyes, the nurse starts walking back in the room, and he goes like this. And shifted right back down because his need for attention and his payoffs were so huge that in his mind at that point, there wasn't an alternative. He was staying this way. Okay? But even for someone who was clinically depressed, within 10 seconds I had him not being able to access that feeling simply by looking up. You know, I spent years trying to figure out how to quiet that negative voice in my head. I wrote a book called The Power of Optimism, How to Silence the Inner Critic. And it was all positive thinking. If someone would have said, well, just look up, I'd be okay, right? And I look up and oh my gosh. And I just noticed that because, you know, if someone's depressed, what's the opposite? Instead of looking down, what do? You look up. What else do? You throw the shoulders. Everybody look down like this. Okay? Now, still looking down. Well, let's try it this way. Everybody look up. Now try to feel depressed. Well, that feels weird, doesn't it? Just kind of hurts the neck. Now look back down. Okay? Now put your shoulders back and sit up in your chair, but still looking down. Does that feel different? That feels different. A little weird. People usually go into confusion before they go into breakthrough because it's just weird. Okay? Now, I want you to go ahead and I want you to look down and I want you to say, I'm depressed, but I want you to take your arms, put them over your head, and wave them around. So it's going to look like this. I'm depressed, I'm depressed. Okay?
I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed.
Good. Now, look up. Hold your body down like it's kind of deflated, but I want you to smile as big as you can and look forward and say, I'm depressed. Ah, you sound pretty good. I'd say jingle bells, jingle. How does this feel? Does it feel different? There was a study in Santa Barbara where they went into this hospital and they were working with people who were chronically depressed, so depressed they could not leave the institute, the hospital, and so the institution. And so they came in and they said, hey, we're going to do this little exercise. All you have to do, we're not going to touch your meds, nothing else, just 20 minutes twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. I want you to stare in this mirror and smile. And that's it. Just like this. 20 minutes. Okay. They did it for 3 weeks. And after the 4th week, they said that most of the people in their study group were going home. Now, the mind affects the body and the body affects the mind. Every thought you have is tied to a physiological, chemical, hormonal reaction inside of you. When you have a thought that is what we might label as joyful, you release endorphins and kephalins, all kinds of amazing hormones and medicines and energies inside of you that influence your physical body. When you're stressed or upset, you'll release cortisol, adrenaline, stress hormones that will, over time, wear your body down. And so it is released by your joy, by how you're feeling, by your attitude, by what you're saying, and also by how you're holding your body.